I was saying that you can be aware of the Twilight language in here. Usually, I'm decoding that a little bit as much as I can for whoever's listening in case it benefits. But a lot of the Twilight language, and you can search this online to kind of find out more about it. But to me, the Dharma is filled with enumerations. Like they'll say the three kayas and the eightfold path and the six perfections and the two truths and all this stuff. And if you don't really know what that means, then the whole text might come up a little bit short. So I have actually in this particular text run into enumerations that I wasn't quite sure of. So if anybody finds or decodes this, feel free to comment. But I think it was the one perfection, two perfection, three perfections thing, which was so brief and a little vague. But who knows? It's probably something. So I'll continue reading. You are the eyes of the world. The way of life. This has three divisions. The intrinsic freedom of the passions, mastering what appears, making one's free behavior the path. The intrinsic freedom of the passions. Even the five sense desires can be understood as the activity of pure and total presence. And even attachment, anger, and stupidity arise from the path of that great pure presence. All right, that's great news. My anger and stupidity are primordially pure. Did you hear that, everybody? So even the five objects of sensuous pleasure are ornaments of the reality field. And when you enter this pure path, unsuitable things which otherwise would be eliminated, even the five passions and the five heinous crimes, are wonderfully the same. Nothing, not even sex, is abandoned. Yeah, you're not going to hear that. I'll pause here to make a comment. You're not going to hear that very often in any Dharma text right there. That is Ati Yoga, pure meditation, where the full spectrum of human experience is embraced into the path. We lose the Judeo-Christian value system and the self-judgment and other judgment, kind of morally judging ourselves and others constantly. Remember, this assumes maturity and skillful means and compassion. So as long as you're authentically trying your best, or maybe, coming into your natural compassion and maturity, ideally everyone in the group is starting to come into their natural maturity where they don't go act crazy with this kind of advice. But it must be that way. Everything. One of my favorite new examples is that our nose, for example, our nostrils engage in warfare with microorganisms. They release chemicals and deliberately kill them with every breath you take. You see, so unless we make room for everything, we can be against killing all day long, but the fact is you're doing it. And that's just one example, right? There's many examples on a larger level too. So if we're resting in compassion and wisdom, then that is the solution. We know we're not trying to kill or take away anyone's livelihood and anything like that. We rest in compassion, and that way we're not sort of creating that karma. So some people don't really have sex, by the way, and so it says nothing, not even sex, is abandoned. So you may not have that to abandon. Um, but I'll tell you, bringing awareness into your habitual tendencies, your desires, is very powerful. And you may find yourself abandoning that stuff naturally. Now you have the freedom. So, in line, I'll keep reading here. In line with these quotes, there are two subjects here: the way of living, where the five sense objects that arise with the five passions become ornaments. Number two, the way of living, where the passions are intrinsically free, unattached to or rejection, acceptance or rejection. The sense objects become ornaments. Whatever pleasurable things arise, whether forms, sounds, tastes, touches, or smells, in their appearing, they are like a dream or an illusion. They appear without any truth to them. The forms, or whatever is experienced, are empty. In reality, your own mind is an open dimension. Scroll. I have stuff at the bottom of the screen. So, in reality, your own mind is an open dimension. The previous section talked about this. Look nakedly at whatever appears at the moment it appears. By relaxing in that state, awareness, in which there is no grasping at appearances as something, arises non-dualistically, intrinsically freed. Thus, because what appears enhances reality, the object of desire are ornaments of the reality field. The passions are intrinsically free. Though attachment, aversion, dullness, pride, and envy may arise, fully understand their inner energy. Recognize them in the very first moment before karma has been accumulated. That's great. I was just mentioning that you can begin to fall into creating karma. And so many of you know that the advice I've given, that if you have attachment, aversion, envy, all these things, is to just let it be. Just let it be. Rest in that energy. And if you really begin to get into that pure presence, um, you'll know when you have a thought that's pulling you into a depression. You will know when you're maintaining it. And there'll be a part of you that may even be stubborn and continues to hold that thought or perpetuate that mood with follow-up thoughts. So that's how we go into the accumulation of karma. We abandon pure presence, and pure presence at first, it's just like when maybe you can think of it as quitting a drug or quitting, uh, I don't know, alcohol or porn or something. At first, you may feel like, oh, this is dull. I don't have anything to do. And so when you start to abide in pure presence, it's not clunky, it's not heavy in an entertaining way. But more and more you get used to this very clear, very magical kind of dimension or pure presence. Don't really need to give that so much labeling, but the more you get used to that, then it'll seem like a habit, like getting drunk or high or something is nothing compared to pure presence. But you may fall back into those cycles for sure. But ideally, they would just remind you how nice and fresh pure present is, how open, inclusive, whole, It answers all the questions without speaking. So, in the second moment, look nakedly at this state and relax in its presence. Then, whichever of the five passions arise becomes a pure presence, freed in its own place, without being eliminated. It emerges as the pristine awareness that is clear, pleasurable, and not conditioned by thought. And some of you may really be noticing how, as soon as you start to proliferate on thoughts, as soon as you get lost in those thoughts, you're creating a cloud. It's an electric cloud, actually, that you can have an MRI and see that all those neurons they're creating a field. So what's possible here is that you start flickering in and out of that. So you go into the cloud of thought and then back into pristine wakefulness. And then you get kind of pulled into thought and then back into pure presence. And that thought was very enticing. I want to go follow it up. I want to go get some food now. But let it go. And you're back to pure presence. And you'll still be able to go get some food. So desire becomes discriminating awareness, the unity of bliss and openness. Aversion becomes the mirror-like awareness, the unity of clarity and openness. Oh, that's the one I was missing last time when I was naming the five wisdoms. It was mirror-like awareness. Yeah, that one with pride and ego, and they call it mirror-like awareness, which I'm sure they'll explain in here. So they're correlating the five wisdoms here, which is nice. So stupidity becomes the reality field's awareness, the unity of. So I think stupidity, typically in the Dharma world, you hear that as ignorance. And this is how translators can throw us off. Where everybody else says ignorance, you decided to be unique. And I'm trying to be gentle and kind about this, okay? It's no big deal. But really, you tried to be unique and use the word stupidity instead of what everybody knows, ignorance. Because what they're referring to here is ignorance becomes the wisdom of Dharmadhatu. Yeah. What does that mean? Well, that means that the mind that's creating this cartoon and kind of constructing an illusion based off of ignorance, that mind starts self-liberating, and then you have the wisdom of Dharmadhatu, the whole space of phenomenon, all sounds, feelings, sights, etc. So we could probably say when ignorance is purified, that you have the wisdom of the entire basic space of phenomena. So the unity of appearance and openness. Yeah, see how I just mentioned appearance. So pride becomes the awareness of utter sameness, the unity of pure presence and openness. Envy becomes the all-accomplishing awareness, also the unity of pure presence and openness. So I like the way what we can find in this text is the translators, and Rinpoche must have read over this. Um, so the translators, instead of wisdoms, they're using awareness. I think that's more appropriate in Dzogchen, actually. We talk about the five wisdoms, for example, in the Kuntazongpo Mulan yogic song there. But I like when they use awareness instead of wisdom for some reason. It's a little bit more accessible. The word wisdom is a little vague. We use that word to signify our liberated mind, but it's kind of an old school word that carries a lot of connotations now. Whereas awareness is very accessible, and yes, it's a total wisdom mind in the sense that you have a nice flow to your intelligence, and uh, you have a spaciousness in the mind where you can actually have the wisdom. So then, I'm reading again. You do not eliminate passions, as do those who are content with listening and preaching or being independent. You do not refine away passions, as do bodhisattvas, and you do not transform them, as tantrics do. These judgmentally conditioned passions are pure and transparent in their own place. Has some more kind of evidence here that taking a pure Dzogchen approach is the way to go. It's very beneficial and powerful if it fits for you. But here it's comparing to the previous yanas. So this is called the spontaneously perfect, universally creative, all generating, majestic, pure presence. Of course, that's what it's called. In this lies the distinguishing superiority of the approach over all others. By means of this sheer presence, whatever passions arise are free as the facets of pristine awareness. Thus, one definitely gets in touch right now with the naturally complete state of being awake to one's capacities. And see that last line is very, very potent and important too, because in the Dharma world, including Dzogchen, there's this myth that like, oh, we're just sentient beings, but those those Dzogchenpas, those are the enlightened ones, and those are the above ones, and all this stuff. But I've never interpreted Dzogchen like that. To me, Dzogchen was accessible to everybody. And we're talking full liberation. It's not just reserved for, certain people, and then we're just the sentient beings who never get to touch liberation. We might as well be practicing Christianity then. So one definitely gets in touch right now with the naturally complete state, not in 10 lifetimes, not in 20 years. This is accessible to you right now. Okay, so we'll keep on going. The way of living which masters appearances. Know the state of pure and total presence to be a vast expanse without center or border. If you can, really abide for a moment here in the presence and see. There's no border, there's no walls, no enclosure. And the more this, what they call manas vijnana, this egoic consciousness is in your awareness, that's also a cycle, self-grasping. It's a feeling of me sitting here. I'm holding awareness. I'm the one thinking. I'm the one talking. Well, really, that reference point just flashes in and out of space like mine. So your space like mine should be familiar to you because you kind of go in and out of it. No, I'm not just talking about the main bardos. So I'll continue. It is everywhere the same, without acceptance or rejection. Blend the nature of mind and its habit patterns into non-duality. Yes, see, so this is a 70 text. It's still taking into account that we have habitual patterns. So many of us will have those after we recognize awareness. We'll still have, various conditioned cycles that have momentum. And that momentum is beginning to exhaust itself, but not until we really come into this other part of our mind. So, because entities, whether subjectively conceived or directly experienced, are present as ornaments of one's own state of being, do not accept or reject them. And because they are not divided into self and other, the apparitional, spontaneously present objects are the play of pure experience. And listen, the majestic awareness, freely transforming itself, displays the integrated structure centered around the inner reality of form. Wait. displays the integrated structure centered around the inner reality of form. I think they're talking about Togya here. Uh, as you begin to really abide in the awareness mind, and that constructing mind starts to soften, uh, reality will start to look different for sure. So can you move up a little bit back? So here, they're talking about pure view. So this is something to consider. It's very radical, and many of us may have internal narratives that stop us from really testing this or entertaining it. But they're talking about everything is the play of pure experience. Everything. So for me, one can settle into the middle way where you know it's all pure, but because beings are dreaming, you don't abandon compassion or any type of empathy and things like that. But all your navigation, your compassion, your wisdom will flow naturally. You don't need to worry about it. You're not going to be a zombie. You're not going to completely check out of reality in a sense that people are going to kind of say, "Oh, I think he's frozen," or something like that. No, it's the play. There's still play here. Okay, so moving on down here, everything that exists and appears displays itself in the space of unborn reality. In this inner reality, there's nothing to accept or reject. All that exists is displayed by me, the supreme ordering principle. Listen, this teacher of teachers, the majestic creative intelligence, displays the integrated structure centered around the inner reality of communication. Everything that exists and is designated displays itself as linguistic communication coming from the unborn field and is gathered into the inexplicable inner reality of communication, the supreme ordering principles symphony. Hmm. And what's nice is that when you start to mingle your mind with the Dharmakaya, when you start to come more and more into awareness, it's like you're starting to walk with divinity. That's where we can see correlations that you're one with God or whatever. There's no single or many when your mind begins to release its conditioning. You are mingling with something so divine, but we downplay it a little bit so that we don't get stuck on all these fantasies about it or attachments and beliefs about it. Um, so we downplay it, but make no mistake, it's not that you are disappearing, but your conditioning is disappearing into something ineffable and truly divine in a sense like that. Yeah. Listen, the teacher of teachers, majestic creativity, displays the integrated structure centered around the inner reality of awareness. Know everything thought or attended to be the substance of the unborn ordering principle itself. Yeah, and you may end up giving yourself a little leeway and kind of, oh man, I'm an awareness holder, like I can go watch all this weird stuff and whatever. Uh but it's okay. For a second you'll give yourself a pass to be kind of reckless and like, oh Dzogchen, it doesn't matter. I can do what I want. But that's when the William Blake quote will come in. The road to excess leads to the palace of wisdom. And you'll learn your moderation. You'll learn how to play and be comfortable with the sense pleasures. But what's great about Dzogchen is it tells you after the 8 yanas, it tells you, hey, sense pleasures are actually okay. They're the play of your mind. They're beautiful. They can be, depending on your mind. Uh, so it's kind of an irony or maybe a tragedy that in the previous yanas you're really renouncing these things, and you may even have an internal conflict with these things, right? And then in Dzogchen, they're telling you, "Oh, it's okay, no problem, eat the whole pizza." Okay, so the realms of form, communication, and awareness of the creative intelligence are the three naturally occurring, uncontrived, integrated structures of reality. Uh, I really think they're referring to body, speech, and mind here, corresponding with the kayas, the three kayas. They use some creative translations. Speaking of creative intelligence, so one who understands the reality of these integrated structures as complete in a moment without having been set up has understood the core meaning of the spontaneously complete inner reality. And I would substitute the word reality with truth. There is no kind of reality that gives you this idea that there's another created structure there, but it's really, I would say, ultimate truth. So thus, because all that is present as form, sound, and thought, ever since they appeared in time, has existed as the three unborn integrated structures, from the start, live this great natural non duality without going into any conceptual analysis. Through realizing beings and their worlds to be these integrated structures, affirmations, negations, antidotes, and hindrances will definitely be freed in their own place. Yeah, so ending there with self liberation, and we will reach a point where we are confident in self resolution, self liberation of thoughts, self resolution of our conditioned cycles, of our blind spots, our ignorance, or our stupidity, as it's known in this text. Um, but these things will start to free up by themselves. How much you trust that it will be equivalent to the degree of liberation. If you trust in self liberation 100%, you're going to be abiding in self liberation 100% of the time. If you only trust self liberation 20%, then you're not going to be experiencing a lot of uh, immediate liberation. You're going to be kind of dredging along a little bit. Um, Hopefully, you have a guide, Sangha, Dharma resources, whatever, to where you can trust all that and say, you know what, self liberation does work. Self resolution is happening. You got to be a little patient. And it gets a little weird because you find yourself getting angry and you're like, oh man, I shouldn't be feeling like this. But then now you got to change it. It's like, oh, well, it's okay if I'm angry. It's okay. I'm hurt. I'm angry. Right. And then you're radical. I mean, I would advise to be radical if you ask me. Like if somebody hurt you or is starting a fight with you, as soon as you can, take responsibility for it. Say you're sorry. Make peace in a radical way with everything and everybody, because that equates to peace in your mind. Yeah. Whenever you have a beef, some kind of problem, Longchenpa start getting grateful for that. Oh, thank you for showing me my ignorance. It's wonderful. Uh, Another thing is you can trust an awareness holder to reflect and correct. They're not going to be the same person they were from one day to the next, because they may see something about themselves, some ignorance was liberated, some cycle was liberated, and the next day they're totally more open and compassionate. And the conditioned sentient being will be like, well, what about yesterday, man? You really, I didn't mean to hit you in the head with a banana. And you're like, oh, what banana? I don't even remember it. It's okay, my friend. Have a banana. Have potassium. All right. Well, yeah. So it is very radical, not for everybody. But man, it's totally worth it, and if you put the logic to it, this is the way to free yourself up.